Imagine a rock. A cold, wet, unforgiving rock sitting in the middle of the freezing San Francisco Bay. They told us it was escape-proof. They told us that the currents alone would crush a man's bones, and if the water didn't kill you, the sharks would finish the job. This is Alcatraz. The end of the line. The place where they sent the criminals that other prisons couldn't handle. Al Capone sat in these cells. Machine Gun Kelly walked these halls. For 29 years, the narrative was perfect. 36 men tried to escape. 23 were caught, 6 were shot, and 2 drowned. The score was The Rock 36, Prisoners 0. Until the night of June 11, 1962. 3 men vanished into the dark. They didn't use guns. They didn't use explosives. They used raincoats, spoons, and a vacuum cleaner motor. Did they drown in the cold, dark waters? Or are they still out there, sipping mojitos in Brazil, laughing at the FBI? Today, we are breaking down the most ingenious prison break in history. This is the story of the ones who got away. Welcome to Sketchy Crimes. Here, we bring the world's most incredible true stories to life, frame by frame. If you love mysteries, heists, and history's wildest moments, you are in the right place. Now, let's get into the cells. To beat the ultimate prison, you don't need muscles. You need a brain. Enter Frank Morris. Frank wasn't your typical thug. He was a foster child, abandoned by his parents, but he had an IQ of 133. That is, in the top 2% of the population. He was a criminal mastermind who saw patterns where others saw walls. But a mastermind needs a crew. He found them in the Anglin Brothers, John and Clarence. These guys were bank robbers from Georgia. They weren't violent. They were just persistent. They had a reputation for escaping everything. They could swim like fish and craft anything out of nothing. And there was a fourth man, Allen West. Remember his name. He is the reason we know any of this happened. In 1961, fate put them in adjacent cells in B Block. The cells were tiny, just 5 by 9 feet. And right behind their cells was a service corridor, an unguarded utility tunnel full of pipes. Frank Morris looked at the small ventilation grill under his sink. It was 6 inches by 9 inches. Tiny. Impossible. But Frank smiled. He realized the salty air of the bay had done something the guards hadn't noticed. It had corroded the concrete. The plan was simple and completely insane. They were going to dig through the wall with kitchen utensils. Now, imagine trying to drill a hole through concrete while guards walk past your cell every hour. How do you hide the noise? How do you hide the hole? This is where the genius kicks in. Phase 1. The dig. They stole spoons from the cafeteria. Not shovels. Spoons. They sharpened the handles against the floor until they became picks. For months, they chipped away at the crumbling concrete around the vent. To hide the work, they made fake cardboard grills. They painted them to look exactly like the metal vents. When the guards walked by, everything looked normal. But behind the cardboard, a tunnel was growing. Phase 2. The noise. Digging is loud. But the 1960s had a solution. Music hour. For 1 hour every evening, inmates were allowed to play instruments. Morris told Clarence Anglin to learn the concertina, a small accordion. While Clarence played loud, terrible music, the others hammered away at the wall. The sound of freedom was hidden behind bad accordion solos. Phase 3. The decoys. This is the part that feels like a cartoon. If they escaped at night, the guards would notice empty beds during the count. They needed bodies in the beds. They created dummy heads. Literally. They used a mixture of soap, toilet paper, and dust from the floor to sculpt realistic human faces. They stole paint from the maintenance shop to give them skin tone. But they needed hair. So, they snuck into the prison barber shop and swept the floor. They glued real human hair onto the soap heads. These things were masterpieces of deception. In the dim light of the cell, they looked exactly like sleeping men. Phase 4. The Raft. Getting out of the cell was only half the battle. They still had to cross the San Francisco Bay. The water was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Without a boat, you die in 20 minutes. They stole 50 rubber raincoats. Using steam from the pipes in the cells, they melted the seams together to build a 6 by 14 foot inflatable raft and life vests. They even built a pump using a concertina mechanism. They built a boat inside a maximum security prison under the noses of the guards. June 11th, 1962. The day had come. Lights out. 9:30 p.m. The guards do their final head count. They see 4 heads on the pillows. Everything is quiet. But under the blankets, the dummy heads are staring at the ceiling. Frank Morris, John, and Clarence squeeze through the holes they've spent months digging. They enter the dark, dusty service corridor behind the cells. They are out. But where is Alan West? Remember I told you to remember him? West was the 4th man. But he had made a fatal mistake. He used cement to reinforce his fake grill so it wouldn't fall out, but he used too much. The cement hardened. He was stuck. While the others were climbing the pipes toward freedom, West was frantically kicking at his wall, crying in frustration. He never made it out. The 3 men climbed the plumbing pipes 30 feet up to the ceiling. They forced open a ventilator on the roof. A loud noise echoed across the prison roof. The guards in the tower heard it, but they dismissed it. Just the wind, they thought. A mistake that would cost them their reputation. The 3 men slid down a kitchen pipe to the ground. They were now outside, by the water's edge. The searchlights swept across the yard. They dodged the beams, moving like shadows in a comic book. They reached the shore. They inflated the raincoat raft. At approximately 10 p.m., they pushed off into the thick fog. Frank Morris looked back at the prison one last time. And then, they vanished into the cold, black water. The next morning, the siren wailed. A sound that had never been heard for an escape before. The guards ran to the cells. They shook the sleeping prisoners. Get up. Roll call. The prisoner didn't move. The guard pushed him. And the head rolled off the pillow and hit the floor. Panic. Chaos. The FBI launched the largest manhunt in history. Helicopters, boats, dogs. They found the raft paddle. They found a wallet wrapped in plastic. But no bodies. The official FBI report states that they drowned. They say the currents were too strong. But here is where it gets interesting. No bodies ever washed up. Usually, the bay spits out its dead. Not this time. Years later, a photo surfaced. Taken in Brazil, 1975. It shows 2 men standing by a farm, wearing sunglasses. Facial recognition experts say it is a 99% match for John and Clarence Anglin. Did they make it? Did they pull off the perfect crime and live out their days in South America? In 2013, the San Francisco police received a letter. It was written in shaky handwriting. It read, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." The FBI tested the letter for fingerprints and DNA. The results were inconclusive. To this day, the U.S. Marshals keep the case file open. They say they will pursue the escapees until they turn 100 years old. So, look closely at the old man in the grocery store. Look at the quiet guy fishing on the pier. Because somewhere out there, the men who beat the rock might still be smiling. What do you think? Did they feed the sharks, or did they beat the system? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Sketchy Crimes and turn on notifications. We are preparing more episodes on the greatest heists, spies, and escapes history has ever seen, and you won't want to miss them. And if you want to see how a man stole a Boeing 727 and vanished into thin air, click this video right here. You don't want to miss the story of D.B. Cooper. Thanks for watching.